Lime Greens by Edward Minton, September 2016. Lime greens are environmentalists with a difference. They're a rare species, but are not on the endangered list, mainly because most environmentalists either don't know that they exist or can't recognize them. Their chief environmental concern is that most politicians and economists believe that the way to keep the economy out of recession is to have it grow and grow. This puts enormous stress upon resources and rapes the landscape in the final analysis, but growth is everywhere worshipped as an economic cure-all. Evidence suggests that their earliest occurrence was back in the 1920s, or possibly a little earlier. They have diabolical difficulty in reproducing themselves in the environmental movement because understanding their diagnosis of the need for the despoliation of the natural world is very demanding of conceptual thought. The theory of relativity is understood and only then believed by less than 1 in 10,000. The rest of us believe it and then say that we understand it. It's a bit like this for the limes too. Please be patient. There's nothing more important in defending the environment than knowing why those most in authority will countenance naught but its destruction in the pursuit of growth. This next step is the worst. Survive it and you may see the end of this essay. The limes contend that the economy is habitually anemic. How so? Well, they hold that for technical reasons that few will examine, but that are acknowledged as true in the highest banking circles, purchasing securities and dispensing quantitative easing are just methods of forestalling financial anemia. To offer only the simplest cause of financial anemia, it is that money has a shorter lifespan than costs. In the 19th century, a particular gold coin might have circulated for centuries, but gold was never sufficient to represent all commodities in trade, so other money, called bank credit, is now used. When a bank makes a loan, this increases bank deposits, but it does so without reducing anyone's deposit to do it. When a bank loan is repaid, bank deposits are reduced by this amount. This form of money, bank credit, which forms about 98% of the money supply, is created with every bank loan and destroyed with every loan repayment. Costs have a different life cycle. If someone borrows money into existence to pay the wages to build a mine, this cost goes forward with the ore to the refinery, with the metal to the factory, and with the machine made there to, say, the building of a biscuit bakehouse. The cost is passed forward until someone actually buys a biscuit and eats it. These costs may, at least in part, go forward from their occurrence until they are included in a final consumer product for decades. If a man earns a wage in constructing a mine and uses it that week to pay off some of his mortgage, that money, though not the accounted cost, has come into and gone out of existence in a week. If he spends it on goods or services and these businesses repay a loan, this money goes out of existence too. We are no longer a community of artisans. We produce many of our consumer products with machines that were built by machines that were previously built by other machines. The longer the lead times in production, the more remote the wage payment from the eventual consumer cost it caused. On average, the lifespan of the money is shorter than the lifespan of the consumer cost. Unlike Mother Hubbard, when we got there, the product was there, but the price in the pocket was not. We could look at all the mathematics associated with this and fill the page with formulas, but I'll not be tempted into confusing you. The thing is obvious. So, what has to be done when we have plenty of products to buy, but we can't afford their prices? Why, it's elementary. We must have growth. If we have plenty of biscuits on the supermarket shelves but no money to pay their prices, there's only one option. We must build more biscuit factories so the wages and other economic stimulus will allow us to consume the sufficiency of biscuits that we already have. Of course, as an alternative, we could increase consumer debt, but when we get around to repaying it, we'll need to build even more biscuit factories yet again. If you explain this in this way among Greens, the ones who become very fidgety and agitated at this point expose themselves as limes. They say things like, "Why do we need more seats in theatres than we have bums to put in them?" But the litmus test is whether they start speaking of debt-free credit. Some physicists believe that somewhere there is something called antimatter. If it comes into contact with matter as we know it, psst, one negates the other, and the result is absolutely nothing. Nothing at all. Now, limes have this idea that when credits come into contact with debts, the result is nothing. When -6 meets +6, the result is naught. Believing this, they will point out that if the public is $1 billion short of the readies to meet the price of products begging consumption, there are actually two ways to solve this. The one in everyday use is to borrow another $1 billion into existence to pay wages to build another factory, bridge or office block, or to fund consumer debt. This allows us to consume what there is to be consumed. Of course, the repayment of this loan requires us to repeat the exercise when the costs flow through into consumer prices again. We're a bit like the maggot that thought the world would starve to death because his apple was too big. Now, the second solution, the one favoured by limes, is not more debt at all, but more credit. They think that government should draw up a national balance sheet, just as companies do company balance sheets. Credit, in the right amount, would be debited against the national balance sheet and paid out to all citizens in equal shares to end the deficiency of purchasing power in the marketplace. They call this a national dividend. Limes favour the ending of financial and economic anemia by creating and dispensing credit. Others favour increasing society's debt to finance more economic activity and believe that by inducing people to grab material out of the environment and through working to change it into something else, wages will be paid to us and the anemia lessened. Mankind has at last reached the point where all that he needs and more can be produced without full employment. But if we don't employ them, how will we pay them? You can't just give people something for nothing, as that would be immoral, like capitalists getting dividends, so the answer is growth. Our demands upon the economy must get larger and larger. Our politicians spur growth, and we vote for it. Why quarry with a pick when an excavating machine is available? Growth must ever be more and more than it was before. Our indebtedness to the bankers has increased every single year since Federation in 1901, as the Bureau of Statistics figures show. But matey, little matey, it's obvious that if we're on the wrong road, there's nothing for it but to run harder and harder. That's just common sense. These lime green people ask us to think. The bastards! Who do they think they are?